only the individual that is the copyright owner of those photographs is going to be allowed to use those photographs. So the safest thing for you to do is to figure out who owns the copyright. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the principal photographer. Although sometimes photographers in their contracts with the clients will essentially assign or give away all the copyright to the client. That's rare, but it happens. Uno, dos, tres.
I have a question that just occurred to me just as we're thinking about legal representation, contract creation, some of these things. We talked about some first steps that creatives could take, right? When I think of lawyers and legal fees, and I think many of the audience may think about this as well, they think of like expensive, like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so expensive. And we just talked about the crusty old guy up on the 60th floor who's going to cost you $6,000, right? Mm-hmm. Per hour. Do you feel like there is a right price, and what kind of goes into pricing and what creatives can expect to pay for some of these different services you've been discussing?
Well, I can't tell you specifically a price. I will say this, and the reason why I can is because what a wedding professional is going to pay an attorney in Los Angeles is going to be much different than what they're going to pay in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. And that's just because of cost of living differences. But what I will say to you is that anything involving incorporation, anything involving consultations regarding operating agreements or LLCs or client contracts or paper contracts with independent contractors, whatever that is, I highly recommend that you only pay flat fees for those services. These are services that the individual should have the experience to provide to you that's customized, but not by the hour. Does that make sense? So in other words, you should know what you're going to pay for a document up front. There should be no like, oh, it took them 6 hours to, figure out whether I should be an LLC or whatever the case is. Flat fees are where you need to go. Now, I would recommend, if you want to know exactly how much you should pay, then it's a matter of you need to go and do your due diligence and look at a couple of different attorneys. And if the price is way skewed from one or the other, ask yourself why that might be. If the person's been around for 35 years, or maybe it's because they only do wedding and event or whatever the case is, and you can, I guess, shop in that way. But at the end of the day, do not pay anybody by the hour. Now, that's going to be different with regard to litigation, for example, or if there's some type, if you want to trademark, it's flat fee, but if there's some type of appeal you have to make, sometimes that is by the hour. But don't pay some $5,000 retainer and somebody works, $300 or $400 an hour or whatever off of that. You need to be flat fees.
Now you're definitely making me, rethink some of the different relationships I've had in the past, because I think that, yeah, for some of that, you don't know what you don't know. And so I think that's a wonderful piece of advice. And I love that. What things do you wish, kind of going into a relationship with someone, do you wish creatives knew? And let's even take it out of creatives. Let's go venue owners, right? Or let's go maybe specifically people who are maybe serving the wedding and event space, but they're not like a direct wedding planner or florist or something like that. Are there things that you're constantly butting up against, as maybe not as much misconceptions, but maybe just like, every single time I'm answering the same question again and again and again? Is there anything like that?
Yeah, so I think that just by way of example would be usage of photography. And I know that sounds strange, but the wedding and event industry is visual in order to market it. Like, I mean, you don't have a business if you don't have images that represent who you are. Mm-hmm. And so there are only a select amount of people that can take really good pictures. Okay. And so a lot of times I deal with, wedding vendor A, who might be a DJ, did an event, doesn't have their own photography. And because they believe that because they did an event, they have the right to use the photographs of the principal photographer, right? Or the they'll go into to client, the DJ will go to the client and go, I want to use the photographs, or the wedding venue will go to the client and go, I want to use photographs from the client. So that'll come down to only the individual that is the copyright owner of those photographs is going to be allowed to use those photographs. So the safest thing for you to do is to figure out who owns the copyright. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the principal photographer. Although sometimes photographers in their contracts with the clients will essentially assign or give away all the copyright to the client. That's rare, but it happens. So one of those two people are going to be the copyright owner. So you're going to need to go to one of those to be like, hey, can I use these images? And they say yes or no, or give me $50 or whatever the case is. That's a big misconception. And I don't know what happened in the past couple of weeks, but that's out. I've been seeing that a lot and talking a lot about that. So the safest thing to do if you're going to use an image for anything in marketing wise
Mhm.
is to get permission from the person that owns the copyright in the image.
Just
That's
to,
just about off the top of my head, Jonathan.
totally. Yeah. Does it have to be written permission, or could it just be something verbal? What's kind of the format on that?
I mean, it's obviously going to be safer to have it in writing in some way. And without getting in the intricacies of copyright law, there are some licenses that typically there needs to be a writing or some type of exchange in terms of that to be truly valid. But if you type an email or a text or whatever it is with the image, like, hey, can I use this image on, for this purpose, for this long or whatever? And they go, yeah, man, sounds good. I mean, is it possible that you might end up a defendant? Yeah, but like you have a strong defense. Like, so if you get that type of permission, the risk of liability is dropped severely, although it can never be completely eliminated.
Okay. You've been a trial lawyer before, correct?
Correct.
So,
Still am, hopefully, like
oh,
knocking on wood. Yeah.
okay, yeah, yeah. Sorry if I misspoke there. When you have you tried or been involved in cases where, outside of just giving advice, where there are lawsuits happening inside the parameters of this industry, whether it's between a client, a couple, or it's between two vendors, maybe even? Have you been in that
Yes.
situation before?
Yes. M- Mostly bench trials. Like, in other words, there's the bench trial, which the judge is the finder of fact, and there are trials in which 12 jurors are the finder of fact. So I have not taken a wedding industry case to trial by jury. However, I have taken wedding industry cases to bench trial. Um, it's been a long time. I've grown very, very sour with litigation in the business world, because at the end of the day, most of the time when you're dealing with contractual issues, breach of contract issues, the only people that win are the lawyers. So
Mm,
I attempt to, as best I can, resolve conflict before the lawsuit gets filed, because after 2 or 3 retainers, even though I just told you, like, don't, work on flat fee, no attorney can work on flat fee. Well, I don't want to say that. Most attorneys don't work on flat fee for litigation because you never know how long it's going to take. And at any rate, after 2 or 3 retainers, all you've done is spend $10,000 for the potential to make $8,000, right? So by way of example, so I tend to, I won't do it anymore. I don't want to say that. Like, if Meghan Markle comes to me and goes, Rob, will you, litigate something for me? Okay, yeah, I will. But I don't like doing it, because that's the one where I don't feel good at night litigating a business issue,
mm.
because no one will win. The contract values typically are not high enough to warrant the case.